This issue of Science Screen Report is brought to you by the men and women of the J.E. Baker Company to help further your understanding of the exciting world in which we work and live.
Young or old, fast or slow, it must keep flowing. Liquid life support, human blood. Blood travels a two-way highway of human chemistry. It carries life-giving oxygen and nutrients to every part of our bodies and helps remove carbon dioxide and other wastes. Liquid life support. From our earliest days of life, blood carries cells and factors that help our bodies fight bacteria, viruses, and other harmful invaders. This one fluid is such an important part of good health and filled with so many necessary substances. When disease strikes, the effects can dramatically change lives. Join this edition of Science Screen Report in exploring components of healthy blood, blood disease causes, effects, and cures, and amazing new efforts to create synthetic blood supplements. Almost half the blood traveling in your body is made up of individual blood cells. There are three kinds of cells. Red blood cells carry oxygen. Platelets allow blood to clot, which helps heal wounds, and white blood cells that attack harmful bacteria and help prevent infection. The remaining fluid part of blood is called plasma. Plasma is the straw-colored portion of blood made of almost 90% water. Plasma carries proteins like albumin, which regulates the amount of water in your blood, and transferrin, which helps blood transport iron. These red disc-shaped objects are computer-simulated red blood cells. They represent the estimated 25 trillion red cells moving around your body right now. Each one is surrounded by a flexible covering called a phospholipid membrane. Proteins in this membrane help determine your blood type as A, B, AB, or O. Each cell is almost entirely made of hemoglobin, a collection of proteins and iron that give each cell its red color. It's hemoglobin that allows red blood cells to carry life-giving oxygen throughout your body. Mature red blood cells have one other important characteristic. They don't have a nucleus, which means they can't divide and multiply. So where do they come from? That's where your skeletal system comes in. Blood cells begin in our bones. Almost all red and white cells and platelets are made by a soft, spongy tissue called bone marrow. With 200 billion aging red blood cells removed from your body every day, productive bone marrow is important to your health. White blood cells. They're one of your strongest built-in defenders against viruses, infection, and disease, and they remember. Before you were even born, your white blood cells were seeking out bacteria foreign to your body, like those shown here in yellow, and destroying them. In an important game of chemical trial and error, other white cells attack viruses. They attack and attack until a virus's surface structure is identified. When it is, new white blood cells begin forming, each with a built-in chemical imprint of an enemy virus. These so-called memory cells divide and multiply. Should that same virus ever attack your body again, these new white cells destroy it. It's a white blood cell's ability to remember that makes disease vaccination possible. Young or old, fast or slow, blood keeps flowing, liquid life support. And your heart is an engine. Your heart pumps blood containing oxygen and nutrients through your circulatory system. Your circulatory system also picks up wastes that are eventually eliminated from your body. Arteries carry blood from the heart, and veins bring it back. As blood moves through your body, it pushes against these vessel walls. We call this force blood pressure. Blood pressure is really a measurement of two pressures, systolic and diastolic. When your heart beats, a surge of blood travels through your arteries, increasing pressure. This is systolic pressure. In a typical teenager's blood pressure of 108/75, systolic pressure is always the larger number. During that brief moment when a heart relaxes between beats, less blood flows. This is called diastolic pressure. Scientists have a growing understanding of human blood and circulation, and ongoing research continues as medical professionals work to treat and cure life-threatening blood diseases and circulatory illnesses. Atherosclerosis is a circulatory illness affecting arteries. Due to age, diet, and other factors, cholesterol deposits form on artery walls. As time goes by, they become covered by layers of tissue and calcium. Arteries become smaller and smaller. This can have a life-threatening impact on human health. A blockage or clot in a human brain may result in a stroke. 500,000 people suffer from strokes each year. Clotted and cut off from blood long enough, portions of a brain die, severely affecting a person's physical and mental abilities. A clot that blocks the flow of blood to a human heart wall can cause a heart attack. Clots are a major reason for the estimated 1.5 million heart attacks Americans suffer each year. Hard or partially blocked arteries are a leading cause of high blood pressure. Having high blood pressure is much like turning off the nozzle on a garden hose with water still running. Blood flows, but pressure in the system is much higher than normal. High blood pressure is another leading cause of heart attacks. High blood pressure makes a human heart work harder. As it works harder, it gets larger and larger and may eventually fail. For high blood pressure, strokes, clots, and heart attacks, modern science is finding surgical and chemical treatments. One surgical solution to blood clots and blockages is called angioplasty. In an angioplasty procedure, a long, thin tube called a catheter is inserted through an incision in a patient's body. The catheter is threaded through veins or arteries to a patient's heart or other body parts. Inside the catheter is a small, thin, balloon-like structure. When a clogged or blocked vessel is reached, the balloon is pushed ahead and inflated several times. This stretches vessel walls near calcium deposits and allows blood to flow more freely. Doctors also use catheters to inject special dyes into patients. These fluids help them examine X-ray images of organs and vessels in greater detail. Chemical answers to circulatory diseases include newly developed medicines that dilate blood vessels, reduce blood pressure, and relieve overworked hearts. They're chemical answers carefully tested for safety and time-released entry into human bloodstreams. Circulatory diseases affect arteries, veins, and other vessels. Blood diseases like hemophilia and leukemia affect individual cells. Science has learned that hemophiliacs, people who bleed without clotting, have blood that lacks a specific protein called factor VIII. For years, treatment has involved regular injections of donated factor VIII protein. But new developments in genetic engineering offers hemophiliacs promise of a better way of life. Gene insertion involves transferring the factor VIII gene from a person with healthy blood to a person with hemophilia. If this new research proves successful, former hemophiliacs may one day create their own factor VIII protein. On a greater life-giving level, scientists and researchers continue their efforts to improve treatments and find a cure for leukemia. Leukemia is a cancer. It's the uncontrolled growth of immature white blood cells in human bone marrow. In this microscopic image, immature white cells in leukemic bone marrow are limiting production of healthy white and red cells and platelets. Chemotherapy has been a leading leukemia treatment. It involves a mix of chemicals aimed at destroying cancer cells. Radiation and bone marrow transplants are other common treatments. But new research efforts hold even greater promise of a cure. With leukemia attacking the body through uncontrolled growth of immature white cells, a cure might be found when we fully understand how and why these cells grow. In this lab, scientists are studying the actual birth of bone marrow. With a future discovery of growth-inhibiting hormones, leukemic cell growth may be controlled. Blood. Simple and easily available? Not really. It's a sophisticated fluid that's often in short supply. Can we create blood synthetically? The United States Office of Naval Research conducts ongoing studies into synthetic blood substitutes. There are two major challenges to overcome. For one, components of blood substitutes must be strong and flexible enough to flow like real blood. For another, synthetic cells must be so chemically similar to real blood cells that white blood cells, our built-in cellular bodyguards, get tricked into thinking that these artificial cells really belong. From their studies, naval researchers have developed a blood substitute called liposome-encapsulated hemoglobin. Synthetic LEH cells are much smaller than red blood cells and are now being tested for stability and immune system compatibility. Human blood, a body basic. Liquid life support. A fascinating chemistry traveling human pathways of astounding complexity. Inside you, more than 25 trillion cells move and flow every second of every day. Science is learning more about blood chemistry through research that explores genetic protein transfers between animals and humans, synthetic plasma grown in yeast, and molecular control of cancerous cells. Why? So that healthy, safe blood and blood substitutes are always available, wherever they're needed, whenever they're needed, to whoever needs them.
As a way to widen your horizons and stimulate your interest in the vital happenings of our times, this issue of Science Screen Report is sponsored as a public service for the youth of this community by the J.E. Baker Company.